For 2 years I was trying to figure out how Zakk Wylde does his 2 notes per string. I feel like I finally did, and thanks to the lessons I'm taking at the Anton Oparin online guitar school, now I think I can explain it, why it worked for me and why the exercises I developed for myself were effective. Currently I'm learning the Paul Gilbert style with Anton. I don't touch my Gibson Les Paul, but hopefully you will take my bits of experience and push this technique even further yourself. This tutorial has 3 main parts. The first part is about how I fell in love with Zakk and where I found the clues for Zakk's technique. In the second part I explain the picking in straight lines concept, which I believe is the main component of guitar picking overall, and how Zakk's picking is a private case of it. The third part is the easier way to play 2 notes per string, starting with an upstroke. If you need to play some part and forget about it. The last part is for those who want to invest their time and learn the original technique, in particular how to practice Zakk's picking starting from a downstroke, to get his signature tone with proper dynamics. A few years ago, while I was having mental breakdowns trying to figure out how to play like Paul Gilbert, I downloaded Zakk Wylde's early album, Book of Shadows. Obviously I fell in love with the Sold My Soul song, the melody and the effects, and what he could do with playing 2 notes per string. I thought it should be easier than playing Paul Gilbert, and what a surprise, I failed at it miserably as well. A year later I went to his concert in Israel. It was so amazing that I decided to find every video on YouTube of people playing 2 notes per string, see if they have tutorials or ask questions if necessary. That was when I discovered Troy Grady's channel, the pick slanting thing, and the most useful video that changed everything.
Now, let's say I'm gonna play 2 notes per string. So my thumb is going up a little bit, and my pick attack is going from this to this a little bit. So I'm moving like, from here, I'm moving a little bit like that. Instead of doing like this, I play like that. So let's say I'm gonna play A minor, for instance, here. Okay, so I go like that. Or down maybe. Where it is. Now I pick really hard with where's the one like. So you can hear it's pretty hard. Oh, where I'm going down.
This part seemed to me very logical because it answered the hardest question: how exactly do you transition between strings? I tried practicing for an hour, and pretty soon got surprising results. And you simply pick in straight lines, making sort of a triangle path between the 2 strings. There was absolutely no other physically possible way that I could think of to do alternate picking 2 notes per string any more efficient than that. That moment for me was probably why I didn't give up on my dream to play better and faster. It simply killed all the theories that practicing on its own for long enough is the key for playing fast or being born for it. The real key, as it turned out, is either figuring out the proper technique or finding someone who already knows it and knows how to teach it. This is exactly what I talked about in my previous video regarding the lessons I take at the Anton Oparin online guitar school. And now, speaking about Anton, thanks to his lessons and using his terms, I can finally understand why the whole experiment I did on myself worked, like what is the theory behind the results. So the most basic concept is that the optimal way to pick is using the weight of your wrist to pass the string, in straight lines, meaning the string should bend under the pick rather than trying to avoid the obstacle we hit by pulling the pick up and thus introduce what some call hopping instead of straight lines. Now, before I learned it from Anton lessons, I was doing it intuitively when I was practicing these 2 notes per string, because I was picking with my whole arm. Forearm. This is the forearm, this is the arm. I checked Google, I hope it's correct, the naming. Well, the shoulder, the arm, the forearm, the wrist, and the fingers. I was just trying to make it look like Zakk's technique. So I was simply unaware that what was going on. The weight and the momentum of your whole arm is naturally so big, so massive, that the string has no other way to go but to allow the pick to pass above it, pushing the string from its way. In Paul Gilbert style we use the wrist mainly, and we had to train it properly to do the same thing. But Zakk's arm picking is much easier to comprehend, at least at playing 2 notes per string only, essentially because we get the weight and the momentum for free, and we have only one type of string transition to do, transition after an upstroke. This transition is a snapshot of the full range of transitions that you learn and practice with Anton. In this case we just need to imagine a triangle between the 2 strings we want to transition between, with the top corner outside of the string's plane and slightly above the top string. Now all we want to do is to make the tip of the pick follow those paths only during picking. Later you will simply optimize this triangle and make it really small and shallow. Notice that those are the exact paths. It's not some conceptual drawing. As we mentioned earlier, the pick hits the string, not the other way around. If you want to achieve Zakk's tone and dynamics, we need to hold the pick stronger the deeper we want to pick. So here is a small hack for those who just need to play a very small part to impress someone or add something cool to a song. Instead of starting from a downstroke, lay the hand on the strings and rotate the wrist to yourself. Now imagine a similar triangle between the 2 strings we want to transition. But the top corner this time is below the lower string. From that corner you have access to both strings. Starting with an upstroke while the hand has a lot of reference points with the guitar or even guitar body, if you have a lower bridge like on an Ibanez RG, 2 notes per string feel much more intuitive. And that's where I started. I started using upstrokes first. I saw a video of one guy playing 2 notes per string very fast. And when I slowed down the video, once he starts going fast, he actually switches to upstrokes. So I started doing the upstrokes first, then I switched to downstrokes. It's much harder at first, but now we can get to the last part of this video. So the small hack doesn't have the bite and the charisma like starting with a downstroke has when you really work your arm, if you know what I mean. But it is a totally legit way, in my opinion, to get similar results, but fast. I would actually advise to start learning 2 notes per string, starting from upstrokes first, just to get the idea. And it's much more intuitive because you can use your wrist, and it's much more intuitive than using your arm and the other rotation we're going to use next. Even if you're used to playing with fingers, using your wrist will still feel very natural in this way. I don't know why, it just felt really natural after a few minutes of practicing. And now for the last part of this video, we will talk about the original technique of Zakk, how to play starting from a downstroke, and some useful tips for practicing. As for the gear, it's very useful to have a big, sharp, pointy pick, like the Dunlop Ultex Sharp 1mm, just like Zakk uses himself. It gives a lot of surface grip with the thumb. It's larger, so you can hold it further, and use Zakk's signature forearm rotated picking for comfort. For an actual playing, a Gibson Les Paul or anything with a tall bridge might be better, because you can slide the rest of the fingers on the guitar body with less tension in your wrist. This is because you can keep the fingers in a more natural, half-open, relaxed position, rather than what I'm doing with Ibanez, that I'm bending the wrist and bending the fingers, which creates a bit of tension in the fingers, just to get to the plane of the strings. A taller bridge will usually make your playing less noisy as well, because the strings are usually further from the pickups, making them less sensitive to the small vibrations of the strings that you don't play. And muting with Zakk's technique is a problem. This is why playing precise will hide the rest of the noise from other strings. What we can also do is use Paul Gilbert hack and mute the top string with the tips of our fingers. So if we play the second string, the third string, even if we hit it, will be muted thanks to the tips of our fingers. Now to the exercises. The first exercise I developed was essentially to get all the components of Zakk's technique together. Just like at Anton Aparent's school, first we learn the basic technique on a single string. If we take the time, train the brain for new habits and do it properly, upscaling it to other strings will be a matter of few days. Just to get used to different strings, places and tensions. And just like at Anton's school, we will go over each part of our body to understand what job it has to do, and each part will have only one job to do. Because combining several movements is too complicated to remember, to train and to perform. Sitting. The most common mistake here is lifting the shoulder to position your forearm, but that's the job for your elbow. Lifting the shoulder usually means that your right hand sucks, and thus you're afraid of the instrument. A high shoulder usually forces you to bend forward, not resting your arm enough on the guitar body, losing your contact and reference points. Consequently, missing strings. The most effective ways to prevent this is first having a nice guitar like an Ibanez RG, when where it's comfortable to put your hand without hurting yourself, because it has cutaways, it's balanced. And the second is shifting your body weight slightly to the right, forcing my shoulder down. This way I'm intuitively making myself to use the elbow to lift the forearm as much as I need. Because if you try to lift your shoulder while you are shifted to the right a bit, your center of gravity, you will feel it right away, and you'll know that you're doing something wrong. So the only job the shoulder has is just to lift our arm and put the forearm on the guitar body. That's it. After that you can relax it as much as you can. So the shoulder rotates the arm, brings the elbow back, and the elbow lifts the forearm and puts it on the guitar body. Once the forearm is on the guitar body, we can relax even more. Our shifted body weight will make it feel almost like sitting on an armchair. Now we move to the forearm. In both Anton and Zakk techniques, the forearm stability and rotation plays a huge role in string transitions. Paul Gilbert and Anton Oparin's string transitions are more complicated to explain and to practice, but for 2 notes per string, we simply rotate it outside and always keep it this way. This intuitively makes our elbow motions slightly diagonal to the strings plane instead of parallel, because we want to get out of the strings plane to make the string transitions. This is what makes the pick to get out on an upstroke and move it wherever we need it next. That's how we achieve those triangle paths we talked about before. As a result of the forearm rotation, we get what Troy Grady calls pick slanting. That's why I find the term misleading, because it's a forearm slanting and not the pick slanting. Even when we wrist picking, the pick doesn't care at what angle you attack the string. If you slant the pick just for the sake of slanting, I don't know, like holding it like this, and you try to keep the same picking direction, you will simply get stuck under the string, and if by some miracle you're not stuck, the difference in angle will cause a massive tone difference in down and up strokes. To keep the rotation of the forearm stable, since we don't put the wrist on the guitar body or the strings, we put the rest of the fingers on the guitar body. We can slide them while the forearm moves. Zakk often slides them on his long fingernails he uses for chicken picking. Those fingers give additional momentum for picking and prevent extreme rotation when you're just starting practicing this style. So if you want to rotate more, you simply bend the fingers a bit more. This prevents doing weird stuff like going really weird angles. And if you think about it, how you can optimize the rotation, the angle you need, you simply need to think about that same triangle. If we go deeper, we probably need to make a bit more rotation to get out of the string without hitting the upper string. If we go shallow picking, we can relieve the rotation, make it more straight, but still have a little bit. And if we want to go deeper, again, something like that. Now for the rest of the hand, we'll lock the forearm, the wrist, the fingers together, not tensed but locked together as one unit. The mass of this unit is what pushes the string aside, underneath. The only tension you're allowed to feel is at the tips of the fingers holding the pick. This tension will naturally propagate a little to your wrist, and that's why we want to relax whatever we can while keeping it all together. The last thing in our journey is our pick holding fingers unit. What we must remember is that we use the fingers only to hold the pick. It's a hard enough job for them, and we don't want to allow any movement in this region. If we start moving them, even micro movements, either we miss the string or get stuck. Only large body parts can preserve picking consistency, like the wrist or the forearm. I was watching some drum lesson the other day, and the guy was talking about drumming from your wrist versus from your fingers. He said that although smaller muscles are faster, bigger muscles are much stronger and consistent. And the same applies for guitar. We also have to remember that if we want to pick deeper for dynamics, we have to hold the pick much more stronger. And holding the pick stronger, even for shallow picking, usually will give a better tone and consistency than playing deeper with the pick wobbling in the fingers. Now let's practice it all together on the second or the third string. These strings are much thinner and easier to pass, so they are perfect for learning to play in straight lines. So for our first exercise, which is the most important, the most basic, and the one we're going to do very slow, on each downstroke we're going to rest the pick on the bottom string. On an upstroke we want to go up enough so we don't touch the upper string. What this does is eliminate the fear and the lack of decisiveness of how wide we need to pick, and train to control the forearm rotation. After a few days you should start to feel massive improvement in playing on one string. So then you can start practicing on two strings. That's where we start to implement the triangle we were talking about. To make practicing on a single string less boring and more useful in the long term, practice every finger combination you can think about. This will train your pinky so good that you'll be able to play Yngwie Malmsteen on one string licks effortlessly. After a few days, when you start to understand what I was talking about and get more in sync with with each finger and each finger combination, so then you can start practicing on two adjacent strings. Again, slowly, because we are starting to transition between strings. The slower and the more painful you can do it, the better it is, your brain will remember. Experiment with your rotation, if you need more, if you need less. If you start hitting upper strings, other strings, you need to rotate more. If you start feeling tension with your rotation, rotate less. At the same time, you can practice muting the top string with the tip of the finger. And again, different combinations are awesome. You can record many cool licks and fills with those. Then after a few weeks, 3 strings. Then 4, and as much as you need. And that's it. I hope those tips will change your life, or at least motivate you to look for answers if there's something you want to achieve. Use them, have fun, record the solos you always wanted, and enjoy the journey.